Welcome to Breaking Barriers. You know your path. We know the obstacles, and we can teach you how to tear them down. And now your host, CEO and founder of Adapting Social, John Vigero.
Thank you so much for your time here today. For people out there watching who are like, who the hell is Paul? Can you give us a quick high level?
Yeah, sure. My name is Pape. I'm a designer and fabricator of custom collectibles. Basically, I tell people I'm Santa for nerds. I've spent the last 20-something years designing pieces that people want that they can't find anywhere else. And that's kind of led me down the rabbit hole of working for companies like Disney, Universal Studios, Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, places like that, as well as thousands of people all around the world. So my wife likes to say that I make memories tangible.
That's so awesome. It's good when your wife has your back like that.
Absolutely, yes.
I think it's so interesting, man. When my team sent me over, some of your stuff and out to your site and everything, it's just so cool. So I saw on your site, so like if there's a company out there or somebody who wants to make something really cool, essentially they can, essentially commission you to make, anything pretty much, like action figure, pretty much what we're seeing on your wall. Like, what's the craziest thing you've ever made?
I don't know. Is your audience PG or are they a little bit more adult? Because I can go either.
They're adults. They're adults.
Probably the strangest one was for the movie director Kevin Smith. Do you remember him? Did Mallrats and Clerks? Yeah. So I did him frozen in carbonite in a lightsaber dildo.
Really? That's insane. That's so crazy. I love that.
Yeah, you can actually look it up on his Instagram. You'll see him holding it. It's very funny.
So now, so people, they come up with these ideas. So how does it work? People, they come up with these ideas, and then boom, they say to you, here's what I'm looking for, right? Like, is there what are the limits? Like, what are the limits? Somebody's like, hey, if for instance, if Kevin wanted that, like life size, like you could do that.
Yeah. It's really funny. Like, what my real job is I'm a professional problem solver. So when people have a question, they don't know how to do something, they don't know how to make it happen.
Yeah,
that's what they contact me for. And I've built kind of a reputation of being this guy who can just pull random stuff out of anywhere. I've actually been in like Disney. I've had a room full of Disney execs call me up and they're like, we've been working on this problem. We can't figure out how to do this thing. What is the solution for this promotional item? And then like right off the top of my head, I'm like, let's do this. And it was because I at one point had worked with David Copperfield, the magician, and had some of that knowledge to pull from. And I do a lot of manufacturing in other areas. And it was just able to pull all these different suggestions and put them together. And so when people come to me, sometimes they have an idea in mind. Sometimes they have like a very specific thing, but a lot, for the most part, it's more just, I want to commemorate something, or I'm a big fan of something, or I'd like to give the perfect gift. And then I usually ask some questions and kind of figure it out, and then just use the experience that I have to make it the best thing that they can get out of it.
That's really cool, man. I'm definitely gonna use you for something, because I have kids and obviously a business and stuff. So I'm wondering, maybe even like a breaking barriers thing. I don't know. So I'm gonna definitely reach out to you. But so we have people asking questions, obviously before we have our guests on. As I mentioned before we started this podcast, Paul's been amazing. Our schedule's been crazy on this side. So, and I just had twins, and the world's been nuts for me on my side. So, and we have a 19-month-old and 2 3-month-olds. Now,
wow.
So we are getting after it. So, but with that said, so one of the first questions we had is how did you get started doing this?
My background is actually in theater, and so I started out as an actor, but then decided to, it was decided for me I'm not very good. So then I started doing the design aspect of things, and that's really where it came from. Theater itself is probably one of the best educations you can get to be a well-rounded person, especially when you get into the design or the back end side of things. So the stage crews and that kind of stuff, because you're typically given a new show every 6 weeks, and every single one of those shows has wildly different requirements, and so you're never doing the same thing twice, and you've got to constantly build a new skill set. And so my background is actually in scenic design and properties design.
Very cool. So what would you say your big takeaway was from theater? Like, what was something that you took away? You're like, wow, this was a golden nugget for me.
Big one is that the show goes up and the show comes down, and that sometimes you just have to let it be done. And that's a
Mm.
hard one for a lot of people, especially when you're dealing with things from a creative perspective, or you're trying to produce something that you want to get out into the public, not necessarily from a theater perspective, but just in general, just a product design. Sometimes you just have to kind of put it out there and see what happens. You've always got time to revise things. You can come at it a second time or a third time, but just know that the show's got to go up. And so at some point you're going to hit a deadline, and you've just got to be comfortable with letting it be what it is at that stage and then move on from there.
Wow, I really like that. That's powerful. Now, so we have a couple people who it seems that they're probably either a designer or an actor, because we don't know who says it, but so this one person said, what essentially, what does your inspiration, like what inspired you to become the designer you are today?
I think it's a mix of, like, my coach would tell me that it's because I have this innate ability to combine education and imagination to create innovation. I think that a lot of it is that I have authority and I didn't want to work for someone else.
Right.
And so what I did instead is I decided to have thousands of bosses. It's my own schedule, but I work off of a client in basis. And
Of
so
course, yeah.
every day I get a new boss. But I also know that that show will go up and that show will go. So eventually, if I'm not thrilled with that situation, I'm going to eventually move on to another one. So a lot of it is I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I don't like working really hard for and this is something I've noticed with a lot of the people that I coach these days, is they don't want to put in a ton of work making someone else rich. So I'm like, okay, I'll put in the blood, sweat, and tears. I'll work my 16-hour days, and I'll do it for 20 years as long as I know that the person who's reaping the rewards actually deserves them. And so I think that's a lot of what kind of drove me to do it. And I'm just, I'm a curious guy by nature. I love education. And so I'm always wanting to learn and kind of test my abilities and kind of see if I can just acquire as much knowledge as I can. And doing this kind of work, it's really nice, because one day I'll be working on, a mechanical puzzle. The next day I'm building robots. Another day I'm doing 3D design and fabrication on 3D printers and lasers. So I'm hand sculpt. I mean, I was just doing some hand sculpting just the other day. So it's like a huge myriad of skill sets that I can nurture to do pretty much anything. And with the business that I have, the kind of sky's the open. It's kind of, everything's is able to be done. And so sky's the
limit.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Now, do you think your ability to not be a good employee or not like authority had any impact on you being an actor?
No, I think the reason I wasn't a good actor is because I'm really bad at memorizing lines, and so I was the worst person to be on
That's
stage.
That's gotta be difficult. That's gotta be really. I thought about that. Anytime I see a movie, I'm like, and especially if there's like a long scene, I'm like, dude, how the fuck did they do that?
It's a skill set. I mean, I can memorize, but the problem is you get to a point where, like, are you memorizing and then just regurgitating it, or are you actually like in the moment? Are you the character? And I mean, I've had the fortunate. I've been like public speaking for like 6 years, and you've got to kind of memorize these things that you're going to go out there and talk to people about.
Right.
And that's given me the ability to like really hone in who the Paul character is, and so I can kind of walk in and do that. But if they make me like switch out and like be somebody else, there was a disconnect there, and I think that's what made it more difficult. And so when trying to memorize lines, it's not so much just what it is you're saying, but you want to deliver it in a way that's powerful. It's got some emotion behind it, and I think that's where I was lacking.
But you know what's so cool though? Have you ever seen $1 Million Listing, the real estate show? So Ryan Serhant was my keynote speaker for an event that I hosted for it was a real estate event. One of my verticals in my agency is real estate. So I had him come, and it's so crazy, man. So I watched the show because my mom, growing up, used to love all the Bravo shows. So we fast forward, saw that show. She used to watch LA. New York came on, like, 2010, or I forget what it was. And I remember just like being like, wow, like, he really like knows how to present himself, and he does it really well. And of course, this whole thing is on camera. It's reality TV, but he did it so well where he could be liked. He can like turn different modes on and off, be serious and stern. And then fast forward, I meet him, and I had a great conversation with him, obviously, after hiring him. And he accredited a lot to that, where he said, he was an actor, right? So he was on some shows, before. I think he's on one or two shows, using some commercials and stuff. But he said, like, being able to be an actor, know when to turn on this, turn this off, and present the character, right? Like you just said. I think it's important for anybody listening in that, because a lot of our audience are business owners or / looking for personal development or just starting. And I think that's the one thing that I think sets certain people apart is when they identify that, like, when you have to turn it on, like, you have to go into character, right? And when I did Tony Robbins, I did like their top like 20% like business executive coaching at one point. Like the person who was my coach was also coaching some crazy executive in Verizon. And I remember them saying that to me, like what you just said, essentially, just like when you step into that mode where you're about to go do a big pitch or you're about to go speak on a stage or whatever else, you have to hone in that character and get into that mode. And I think that's the thing is most people kind of jump into their business and they're just being themselves. They had a shit day, and so it carries on. And it's like, no, you got to drop that shit behind you, and you need to get into character, right? You're better get in front of your whether it's your employees, your new prospective customers, or customers. You got to be in character. You got to be ready to go. So I love that you just said that. I think there's a lot to take away from that. But anyway, I was saying that because obviously it's probably helped you going through theater school and like trying to be an actor. Now being a business owner, when you have to turn it on, it definitely probably helps get into character.
Absolutely. Doing trade shows is like one of the hardest one. Like, it's funny. I'll go to trade shows and I'll go and meet people when I'm walking the aisles, and I am a different person than when I get behind a table. I'm behind the table, I'm the showman, and it's like, this is what I want. I'm the best thing that you've ever encountered because that's what you have to be. And absolutely, it's 100% it. And the other great thing about it is when you acknowledge that you are going into a persona, even though it's you persona, it gets rid of that like imposter syndrome. It's like, I am this salesman today. Even though I might have doubts in my mind, or I'm the best pitchman at this, you can go into it and be like, this is the character I am today, and I am that confident. And it just helps you to kind of get into the mode of it. And like you said, it really helps to, like, it pushes the needle forward where you really need it to in those moments. And then you can have your shit day and then go and be off at a different time. That's perfectly acceptable, just not when you need to be on.
You got to be in fucking character, baby.
That's right.
I love that. Now, so for people listening in here that are regular listeners, we typically tend to ask two pretty ones. One I would say is mildly challenging. One's kind of like a little more difficult. Do you have kids?
Yes, I have 3.
Okay, 3 kids. And what are they? Boy, girl?
All boys, 17, 12, and 10.
Okay, all right. So you're out of the thick. I'm in the. You're. I mean, obviously, every level has a different new challenge, right? Unlocked. So, but anyway, so this is actually pretty good though. So, all right. So we have the mild, kind of. Then we have the spicy one. Which one do you want first?
Hit me with that. Well, let's start with mild. Sure, we'll go with that way.
Okay. So, over your career and just in your life in general, has there been any quote or adage? It could be a Paul original. It could be something with your family, or something you picked up. Is there any quote or adage that like you think about when you think about tough times and being resilient?
When I was in 4th grade, I did my very first play, and it was the Thomas Alva Edison story. And in it was the dumbest show, whatever, elementary school. Doesn't matter. But there was a song in it, because this is elementary school. But there was a lyric that said, nothing is impossible if you try. You'll be sure to work it out by and by. If you never say quit, you never say die, you'll be sure to give it a try. And honestly, like when I am stuck or when I feel like it's just, I'm pushing that boulder up the hill and I'm not getting anywhere, that stupid song pops into my head. It's like, nothing is impossible. And truly it isn't. Right. If you really want it. If you're determined, if someone stole your kid and said that you need to score 3 high-end jobs to get your kid back, I guarantee you're going to get your kid
back. You're getting the jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's about motivation. And as an entrepreneur or solopreneur, the hardest thing is self-motivation. And if you are lacking in that little bit of self-motivation, you're gonna have a hell of a time getting up that hill. So yeah, it's really just nothing is impossible if you really truly want it.
I love it. I actually heard something similar recently. That was great. It's very insightful. We had somebody on the podcast recently who's like an expert in like essentially like holistically healing traumas, anxiety, depression, whatever else. And they were just talking about something similar where they were saying how like if I put out a 10 foot long and whatever, a foot, 2 foot wide, block of wood on the floor, and I said, hey, I'll give you $20, you go from one side to the other, right? It's the easiest $20 you ever make, right? But if I put it up on top of a skyscraper in New York, and one side, you had to cross to get to the other side of it, but on a small little plank, would you do it for $20? Most people say no.
No,
But if
right.
if the building you were on was on fire, there's your motivation. You're gonna
Exactly.
you're gonna run your ass across that plank.
That's right.
So,
And you're not going to think twice about it. And that's
no,
the funny thing is like we get so like we are our worst obstacle to overcome.
dude.
Like
Yeah,
business isn't the obstacle. It's it's self-motivation and the like the confidence that we have to do it. And
totally.
I've been working with like trying to figure out this whole thing that I'm working on right now. And my wife says that my biggest obstacle is that I don't understand no, and I never have. As a kid, it's like I'm going to do this, and I'm just
Right.
going to, and my brain is like, all right, you're going to do it. But trying to encourage other people to have that mindset is very difficult. They're just like they'll throw up no's all the time. It's like all these
Right.
roadblocks. I'm like, get them out of your way, guys. Just go for it.
Right.
It's hard.
Well, it's dude, I definitely, again, as a business owner and having, a lot of employees, I definitely understand that. And honestly, that was one of my challenges early on. Like when I started my company, my first company, Adapting Social, I started it when I was 17 years old. So like for me, I was in high school still, and then obviously by the time I had my first employee, I didn't go to college. I was probably like 20 years old or so. And I remember like just having that mentality of like, let's go, 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 go. But like the person has to want that or be motivated by what you're motivated. It took me a while to realize that not everybody has the same motivators, and not everybody thinks the way we think, and they don't move the way we move.
Yep.
And so just go, 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 doesn't work for like 90% of the population, right?
It doesn't.
It might be smaller than that. I don't know, maybe, not as small, but the whole key is at the end of the day, at least, what I've learned, throughout my career and just the coaching I've received over the past 16 years, is just like, you have to find that harmonious way to operate. Of course, if you have people doing your business and they're working for you or they're on a team with you, if we have this crazy expectations, and you're just pushing people too much, especially the world we live in today, everybody gets demotivated and then they don't want to work. And then they're like, I'm stressed. And it's like, all right, well, how can you bring out the best in them? How can you raise them to their best performance? And I think back to what you were saying earlier about being motivated, it's like finding what motivates them. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's purpose, maybe it's just, seeking through projects and stuff, And so for anybody listening there, I think that was huge, because in the end of my career, man, it's cringy thinking back. Like I used to at the time, when we got up to like 5 to 10 employees, back in the day, I remember walking into the room and being this like positive, rah fucking asshole guy who was just trying to get everybody so amped up, because that's what amped me up. So I'm like, let's go. Who's ready? Motivation Monday. And everybody's like, looking back, everyone's like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why? What is he doing? Like, not everybody's motivated by the same stuff, obviously.
Correct.
So, Are you? Before we go to the next question, though, that was great. I love that. But are you a DC or a Marvel guy? If you had to choose,
If I had to choose, it's gonna be DC.
DC. Okay.
Yeah.
We did so, and some of our all hands meetings, we have all of our team together. It's so cool to see the impact and the reach of all these different types of programs. But like with us, we have employees in over in 6 countries and all throughout the U.S. And we did that. Every all hands meeting, we do this or that. And my HR director was like, "All right, DC or Marvel, I'm doing it. Let's see." And it was crazy to see the distinctions, the differences, and what people motivate people as kids. And I'm pretty sure on our side that DC won that one. So who's your favorite superhero though?
I know it's generic, but I'm gonna go Batman.
Okay, can't go wrong with Batman.
And the reason is because he's not like he takes everything that is human and makes it super.
True.
Like that's the thing. It's like he wasn't just given here's your get out of jail free Superman can do anything thing. It's like, no, I can get shot, I can get stabbed, I can think my way through this.
Right.
I'm like, let's do it. Let's go. That's the answer. But what I think is funny, like when you talk about DC and Marvel is all teamwork.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like everybody in Marvel is a team. Everybody in DC is a solo that can work with other solos. So it's like entrepreneurs working with entrepreneurs is all DC. Whereas Marvel is, no, we're all gonna get together and we're gonna do it together. It's like nope. So yeah, I mean it's easy to fall into DC when you're so used to like doing things on your own.
Yeah, Batman's my number one too. And my little brother Brandon, he's like 26 now, but like we all freaking love DC. Right, onto the second one.
Okay.
So this is going to be good though, because obviously you have kids. They're not, your kids don't have kids and stuff yet. So anyway, so all right, so a lot of times we think about legacy. This is more of an exercise. So a lot of time we think about legacy based on like where your feet are planted today. And by the way, where are you? What state are you in? And where?
I'm in Nebraska.
Good old Nebraska. Okay, awesome. So where your feet are planted over there in Nebraska, and on into the future, I want to reverse engineer that thought process, right? Because we think about where you are today in Nebraska, and boom, what are you going to leave behind for your kids, right? But if we were to go to the end in mind, I want to kind of give you like a little simulation, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So, if you're, again, God forbid this is ever an actual situation, right? So this is just purely simulation. But so let's just picture it's your 3 kids, right? They're at your gravestone with their children, right? And let's just say your son, give me a son name. Who's your youngest? Who's your youngest?
Gideon.
Okay, so let's just say he looks over at his kids and he says, "Man, I wish you met Grandpa Paul. He was blank." How do you think your kids would remember you and your character and what you've done for them in that scenario?
I think if you were to ask them, they would say he could do anything. is really what it is. But he's also like, I nurture that in anyone that I can encounter. And so the big thing is like with all of my kids is that I'm never going to be one that says you have to do this. I have no expectation for them. The thing that I expect is that they do whatever they do with as much passion as they can muster.
Yeah.
And so I want my kids, if they're standing at my grave, to be like, your grandpa really made me become the person that I am because he had faith that I could do it. And it's really, and for me, when I speak to groups, when I speak to kids, it's the same thing. It's like you have no idea what you're truly capable of,
right?
Until you're put into that situation, until you really want it.
You're pushed.
Having your kids kidnapped, you're gonna be able to do things you would not believe that you could do. It's all about motivation. So if I could motivate anybody or even leave a legacy of any kind, it would be that, to have the self-worth that you actually truly deserve and to do the most with it.
Growing up, did you have a hero?
All my heroes are fictional. So
any non-fictional?
No. I mean, like my mom is up there as my mom and my grandpa, but for different reasons. My grandpa was that guy who could make anything, but I think he might have said 10 words to me the entire time I knew him. He was just not a talker. He was the guy who did things. But my mom, she grew up like she had a rough go of life, and she's a survivor, and she's still got a positive attitude for it. So if I was to look up to any like a true life role model, it would be my mom, just because of what she's persevered through and still is happy about it. She doesn't take it as a society has wronged me. She's like, what's the next challenge, and I can encounter it and just get past it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And when I look at that and I unpack that, it's like anybody that we respect in this life has gone through some shit. It's very merely rare that we respect somebody who had a golden spoon in their mouth and a silver one up their ass and just got unscathed through life, right? Typically, it's people who went like your mom and, like my parents and stuff, like who had their issues and challenges, but like ultimately are still standing and / even fucking better that, your mom has an amazing attitude, right? Now, are you guys from Nebraska?
I am. We came back when we decided to have kids, but I did the LA thing for a while.
I was gonna say, I was like, wait a second. So Nebraska to LA, back to Nebraska.
Yeah.
Now, how did you like LA when you were in LA?
I didn't mind LA. So being from Nebraska, we have this thing called a work ethic, and it doesn't. I went to grad school out in San Diego, and it was probably one of the hardest adjustments for me, is because I'm sun's up, I'm working. It's a farmer thing. It's like how we have a strong work ethic, and being in California, everybody's too laid back, and it just I think it's more of a New York mentality that I have. It's like it's time to hustle. It's just that really lackadaisical approach to life drove me crazy, and so the other thing that I learned about LA is that your talent matters not. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad at what you do. It's completely about who you know and if they are successful, especially from a design
Mm,
point of view. Like I had a good friend who was he's a great writer, director, and producer. But he said, you know, the only way that you, even though you're phenomenal, will be successful is if I take you with me. But I've already got 7 guys who do what you do, so you're number 8. So if you've
mm,
got the patience to last 15, 20 years of doing shit work, then maybe you'll be successful.
right.
And that was a hard pill to swallow. So when we left LA, I basically started doing this business that I have now, and I can do this anywhere, and I can go anywhere to work with people, you know. So Disney calls me, or I go to Disney, and it's like, all right, let's do that. Or I go to the, you know, New York, I'll go deal with Jimmy Fallon, and he's like, all right, this is what we need to do. So being centrally located is useful.
Yeah, I mean that definitely helps. Also, one of the things that popped up here. So first off, thank you for that. Those two, you obviously crushed those, and it wasn't even a challenge for you, so I love it. There is another Paul Pape in Hollywood.
There is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that must
actually,
be
we're friends.
really.
We are, because we get confused for each other enough. He's old enough to be my dad.
He's 71.
Yeah, and so yeah, but we've chatted, and because he does a lot of voiceover work, and I also I do voiceover work, and we're both in the industry, so a lot of times we'll get confused for each other, and so we've just become friends on Facebook. And there's like, no, you're talking about the other Paul Pape and whatever. So whenever I do voiceover work or anything, I have to use my middle name because there's an industry issue. So I'm Paul Eric Pape when you actually get into the industry. So.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, dude, I really appreciate your time here today. You know, I'm a big believer that time is the one asset we don't get back. So you spending it here with me today, especially in light of all of our reschedules, I'm so grateful for it. So thank you. Where can people find you, and how can they engage with you if they're interested?
If you want to find me anywhere online, I am Paul Pape Designs. You can find me pretty much anywhere, all my socials, whatever, Paul Pape Designs. If you're interested in learning about the speaking career, if you want me to bring me in, talk about creativity and how to unlock all of your potential, then that's at paulpape.it, because I ask people to Paul Pape it, and that's where you
Love
can
it.
find me.
And for people that are listening, they're like, oh, that's interesting. Like looking at the stuff you have behind you, like if somebody was like, oh, I want to get one of these things made behind you, like, and they're like just curious, is that like a fortune to get done? Like, I'm sure obviously like the pricing aspect of it, but like for me, like one of the things that I thought about, so maybe it could be a good model as an example for people listening in, like let's just say you have the action figure to your back right behind you, on the bottom shelf. If I was to go, I want to make something like that, but like me and my 3 kids and my wife, like to put on my desk, right? Like something like that. What's like the going rate for something like that?
Typically for each custom action figure, and that's to make it look like you just went to Walmart and bought yourself off the shelf, is usually about $300 typically.
Got it.
So it's not terribly expensive, but for completely custom, there's a lot of companies out there that will like scan your head and put you on any body, but I don't have Batman's body. I wish I did, but I don't. And so, it just looks weird. And so what I do is I actually take take photos and references, and then we actually create the whole 9 yards. So if you wanted an action figure, it's about $300 is typically where it starts.
Awesome. So that's really good to know. That's not bad. And obviously a lot of these things you keep forever. So it's super cool. All right, awesome. Well, Paul, thank you so much, man. I'm grateful for your time. And guys, go give Paul a follow. I mean, some of the stuff you're doing is so creative and so amazing. So it's definitely stimulating to watch and see what you're doing. So thank you, man.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.